Yay, Sarai Rigsby. Thank you for joining me today. Yes, hello, hello. So cool. we didn't age ourselves. We were teasing before we hit play here that we come from the dial-up generation. So just for our listeners, you're zooming in on your face, you're dialing in through your phone. So there's the audio might be a little bit fuzzy, but it's okay. We're still we're gonna feel each other. So
Right.
thanks for coming. Thanks for making time. So I don't know a whole lot about you, so I'm just going to be very transparent. But this is what this time is for. We get to know more about you. I was at the CASA conference almost exactly a year ago. I'll be there again. You're going to be there in a couple days? Am I going to see you?
Yes. Great. I'll be there.
Good. So we'll see each other. I got to do some sessions, and I remember very vividly. After one of my sessions, you were waiting, and there was a line of folks, and you were waiting so patiently. And you came up and you gave me a handwritten note, and you just said, whatever compliment you, whatever kind word you said to me, but you said, I am always excited about and interested in sharing my story. If my story can ever be of help to you or your audience, please reach out. And to be super transparent, I felt a great sense of responsibility when you said that to me. I thought, oh my gosh, if I'm going to invite you to share your story, I need to know how to hold that in a way with tenderness, with competency, and I trust myself in a lot of ways, but I hadn't dove too deep into this, podcasting platform. So I knew that when I did reach out to you, which you've been on my list, that it was going to be the right time. But also I was going to be in a space where I could really uplift your story in a way that's meaningful, not just for you, but folks listening. So I'm just excited to have you and want to give you a chance, just as we get going here, just to introduce yourself. Who are you? How are you? What's it like to be you right now in this moment?
I love that statement. I make that statement to people all the time. I'm like, what's it like to be you?
Yes, nice.
Just need to know. Yeah. Well, hi, my name is Sarai Rigsby. I am currently a CASA, a volunteer guardian at Litem through CASA Franklin County. I have many jobs. I also work in data and analytics full time. That pays my bills, and CASA feeds my soul.
Yes.
And do some other odd jobs here and there. But just over the course of my life and my story, I've really tried to bring perspectives about trauma, about the effects of trauma, to individuals who are either too afraid to ask, or individuals who have been affected and don't know where to go and how to, kind of move forward in their life with this new filter. And, individuals in the investigative and legal fields of really educating them on discovering trauma in their cases, and these very intricate cases, social workers, caseworkers, individuals who don't know where to start in really severe abuse, neglect, dependency, or trafficking cases. So I call myself a trauma thought leader, and really just pursue opportunities where, my story can help give a new view.
I love it. And we're going to hopefully get to hear a little bit about your story, the parts that you want to share. But can you let's back it up. What's CASA? What is a CASA? And then the two-part question, what's a guardian ad litem, literally, and then how do you show up in that work?
Yeah, so CASA stands for Court-Appointed Special Advocate, and it's an organization that trains citizen volunteers, we call them lay volunteers, to advocate for the best interests of kids who have experienced really severe abuse, neglect, dependency, or trafficking, and have, a case in the juvenile court system. So these volunteers spend about, 10 hours a month meeting with the child or children, and really learning and understanding their story, advocating before the judge about where they should live, who should be around them, any actions that parents, caregivers need to take. The goal at the end of the day is making sure that that child is not only safe, their basic needs are met, but that they are also treated like a person and a human being from here on out, with the mental health care and the opportunities that they deserve. So it's a phenomenal organization. We're continually looking for volunteers, specifically volunteers who can assist with sibling groups. We have had a massive influx of sibling groups, up to 7, 8 kids. There's a lot happening right now. So if you're interested in volunteering, please do go to CASAFranklinCounty.org. It's amazing pre-service training, a lot of post-service training. You also get to meet great people like Sarah at our conference. And, highly, highly recommend if you're looking for a way to get into the business of helping kids and families.
Well, I love that too. You said I've got stuff that pays the bills, but this feeds my soul. So anyone out there listening who has your bills paid and you're looking for something soul filling, this would be a route. Sarai, what brought you to want to? I have 1,000 questions actually, but I'm going to kind of slow it down. What inspired you to become a CASA? Because you could, or a guard ad litem, you could have been. You could have done a bunch of different things, right? You could have volunteered or shown up in people's lives in all kinds of ways. How did you get to stepping into the doors of Franklin County? Maybe this starts to spark a little bit of your story, but bring me to that road, that path.
Yeah. So I was actually a foster parent back in 2014. So 2014 to 2017, I got into the foster care field because of my own personal experience. I experienced really severe childhood abuse and young adult abuse. It started at age 5, and I wasn't rescued. I was not found by the system. So I know, what it feels like to be in a space where no one's advocating for you, where, so I, got into foster care. I had fostered 22 children in 3 years and had the amazing blessing to adopt 2 children from that. After 2017, I didn't want my kids to have to be in the system anymore. So I terminated my foster license. And once you're in the business of rescuing,
That's a whole topic we'll get to another time, but go ahead. Yeah.
Whole topic. I mean, so there came a point in 2019 where I was just like, there are so many people suffering. What can I do? But I remembered as a foster parent, one of my teenagers, I fostered kids birth all the way to 20 years old. One of my teenagers had a CASA, and I was like, let me take a look into this. So reading about the program, I was just so stoked. I loved just how engaged and involved you are, and the ability to really see the whole child's story and everything about the child. As a guardian ad litem, you are appointed to that child's whole life. Every medical record, everything that touches their life, you have access to ensure that you can substantiate what happened and where to go next. As a foster parent, you're very limited. And so it was really, it was really important to me that if I was going to give, I was going to give with a giant capital G. And I joke that CASA was foolish enough to let me in. So
nice. Hey, lucky us, lucky everyone, I guess. Oh man, so you got into this role because you wanted to do more. And you wanted to have more of a voice, right? Even though you had so much experience, with the 22 kids. So it reminds me of what I even reflected when you came to talk to me, that the responsibility of holding your story. So we're talking about another responsibility, that you have access to an entire person's life and history. So the benefit of that is you get to use your voice. You get to advocate. You get to put pieces together. I think I would imagine there's a shadow side to that for many reasons. One, just the impact of holding all the maybe abuse and neglect and the struggles that someone has had, that weighs on folks, right? 2, depending on your education, which you're saying Franklin County has an incredible amount of education, depending on how you're supported, we can quickly pathologize folks. We can quickly see diagnoses and hold on to those versus understanding those as sometimes symptoms, right? So how do you navigate the responsibility of having so much information about a person that doesn't always include their gifts, their passions, their interests? You know what I mean? So how do you balance all of that?
Oh yeah, it's a lot, but once you meet the kids, once you meet the families, you really start to draw out what's the most important to them. And you surround that with the containment. You make decisions based on the information you have of how can I, remove the elements of chaos, preventing this child from succeeding, preventing these parents even from succeeding, and doing what is in the forefront of their dreams or of their needs. So it's a ton of information. And yeah, also being a container for other people's really severe abuse, it's not easy.
Yeah.
As just an abuse survivor in general, I think that I'm like untouchable now, that like, oh, I've seen it all, I've experienced it all, but you get that case and you meet that child and you're like, okay, so the caregiver's like 76 years old and you can't have a flashback in their living room, they won't know what to do with that, so we gotta rein it in. So there are great opportunities as a survivor to reach out and help, but you've got to know your boundaries. And I'm really appreciative that CASA takes that and uses that. They do not make a point to violate what is going to put you into survival mode.
Yeah.
So that, it's been interesting, but it's, I think that some of the triggering parts for me too, though, I was raised by two abusive parents. One of them is a clinical psychopath, and the other parent rehabilitated, thankfully, and we have a great relationship. My trauma started at 5. My first memory that young was being asked to come into a room and witness the physical abuse of a loved one, and that became a ritualistic thing. The non-offending parent at that time, after about 3 years of being forced to hear these screams and being forced to really witness such, atrocities against another person, graciously gave me earplugs, so there were just these moments where I meet parents that mimic that experience, and having to sit with a straight face and having to look at them in a clinical way, because you can't look at them, otherwise, is definitely challenging. But you tap in to your resilience, which comes from a whole lot of counseling. So get counseling.
Get therapy. Yeah.
Just get all of it, every bit of it. If you see it, just take it.
Yeah, nice.
If it doesn't work, try another one. It's fine.
Yes.
It's just tapping into that resilience and really knowing where you are in the moment. My counselor's so phenomenal. She gives me this mantra that I say when I start to go away, when I start to go somewhere else, and it's, I'm not there, I'm here. You're not there, Sarai, you're here. So let's here. My hands are here, my body's here, I'm here. The unsafe situation is not here.
Yeah.
But it can be taxing. I am a multiplex recipient of abuse. So, I've experienced physical, sexual, emotional, and spiritual abuse in my childhood. And when you grow up with a psychopath, it's a whole it's a whole other level. People throw the word around. Oh, my parent was a psycho. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, no, there's something you're speaking to a clinical severe mental health condition. Yeah, not a pejorative term.
Yeah. I meet individuals and on some of our cases that it's, yes, have they done something really awful? Yes, I've done something really awful, but there's attachment there. There's something to pull back and redeem. When you grow up with a psychopath, there was absolutely no attachment, none. There was no parental bond between me and my parent. So putting me through pain, exacting pain, forcing me to witness things that shouldn't witness, forcing me to participate in hurting others. That is something that keeps you up at night. Being part of things that you're looking at them, wondering how this is even making sense, in their mind, but truly this is not their reality. The reality I'm in is not the reality that they're in. So it was very trying. And I think in the field that you're in and in the way that you choose how to help others, really important to understand where your resilience will kick in and where your boundaries will say, absolutely hell no, we're not. We can look at the fence, we can paint the fence, we are not crossing the fence.
There we go. Well, let me dig in right there, because there's just so many gems you just offered. We're using some terms, so I want to unpack them, right? Specifically the term resilience. I also want to unpack boundaries and containers. So I'm going to riff a little, and then I want to hear kind of some deeper story from you. One, I loved how you said you connected boundary to containment, right? And I talk about this a lot. Like, boundaries doesn't mean no, stay away, right? It really, we're talking about like the banks of a river, right? You can't get into flow if there's no banks. There's just going to be swampland. If there's too much, we constrict, and now we've built a dam, right? So the banks of the river, the containment, that's really important. And that's what I'm hearing when you talk about boundary, to know where you end and someone else begins, know where you're being invited to step out of yourself because of a dissociative experience or a trauma response, etc. Right? But how I want to bring that into resilience. I was just listening to a podcast today that really grounded this for me. One of my favorite definitions for resilience has been that Robert Jordan quote, right? The oak tree stiffened with the wind and broke, but the willow tree bent when it needed and survived. So I keep talking about that quote, that resilience is about creating a more flexible nervous system. Well, then I'm listening this morning, and I was reoriented to this word. This gentleman was talking about the stress response. So he's talking about everyone is always, his name is Scott Lyons, wrote a book, Addicted to Drama. He's always talking about, or people are always talking about, stress is the killer. Stress is the thing that leads to disease, and it is the challenge. And what he reminded us of is that the stress response, that's not the actual challenge that we're up against. The stress response is for our benefit, right? If a car is driving down the street and it gets too close, I'm gonna, my stress response kicks in so I can brake, right? Or so I can turn, right? So that stress response isn't the challenge. It's when we get activated into mobilization or immobilization, and we don't allow the stress response to finish, where we get to discharge the distress, where all that neurochemical residue then gets to get out of our system, whether we're shaking, screaming, yelling, running, and now our stress response comes back down into a more homeostasis state, right? And that's where he brings in the word resilience. Our nervous system, our stress response, to activate for our protection or defense or connection, and then to come back down to balance. That's what resilience is, that we can over and over activate and then deactivate in ways that are safe. When you have complex trauma, when you have developmental trauma, right? When you have these experiences, too much, too fast, too soon, not enough for too long, over time, where you're consistently, your stress response is activated, but you don't have any reprieve, that's where we get disease. That's where we get challenged. So that was a lot, but I'm really curious for you to go in a little bit deeper around what you mean by resilience and how that, because you coupled the words boundary, resilience. Tell me a little bit more, not about just what that means for you, but how do you show up in a way for your parents or your clients that helps them benefit from your resilience experiences?
Yeah. For me, resilience, I heard this really, really great, quote, that the skills that got you through the trauma are not the skills that move you forward.
Oof.
And for me, I have to really choose the skills that I'm going to apply to the situation that I'm in, because they're watching. They're watching you. They're watching your body language.
Yeah.
They're watching if you blink. They're watching if you,
Mm-hmm.
you can say a lot by just your reaction. And you've really got to train yourself to respond instead. So the resilience perspective of that reaches in and says, okay, before I go into this situation, what skills do I have? What skills do I have? What skills do I think I have? but I'll fall down the stairs with them. And what skills do I have but cannot apply today? And that's where the
Mm.
boundary piece comes in for me, where it's like one day I can be working a case of sexual assault and I'm scrolling through everything and I'm, doing okay. And another day I'm ready to throw up. It's like, nope, the skill is not there today. And that's all right. It's not failure. There's, I always tell our trainees when we talk about boundaries that it's not courageous to put yourself in survival mode to show up for a kid. That's
Ah,
not
say it
courage.
again. Say it again.
Yeah.
Say it again.
It's not courageous to put yourself into survival to show up for a kid. It's actually called self-harm.
Yeah.
So it is really, really vital that from a resilience perspective that I check myself every day.
Yes.
Sometimes every hour or 5 minutes, depending on
Amen.
what the night
Well,
before.
and it's back to that present moment, right? How do I continually show up in this zone? What's here now? What's here now? You'll hear me on Thursday. I'm going to be talking about how we get back to the present moment. I'll shout you out for this, but I to honor what do you say? The skills that got us through aren't the skills that help us grow. That's a paraphrase.
Yeah, are the skills that move us forward.
Are the skills that move us forward. So for you to notice your resilience that got you through, that helped you survive, it could be on that fear cascade, could be your fight response, could be your flee avoidance, it could be your shutdown dissociative. Those are skills that kept you alive and built into your resilient nature, but you have a whole other set of skills that you would share with others, that you would activate. So tell me about some of those. What are some of those resilience skills that you feel like that's what you're trying to share or model for your families?
Yeah. For my kiddos, what I really try to work on with them, and mind you, as a guardian, I'm like, and it's not my job to therapize kids. I'm
Yeah.
not a clinical psycho, like I'm not going to
Yeah,
go
yeah,
there.
yeah.
But just being able to help a child define safety is massive, because when you experience trauma, I define it in 3 ways, in I guess three slices. Trauma, it sorry, my stutter starts to come back every now and then.
It's okay.
Trauma is a disruption that causes a distortion that leads to deviating. So when you go through a traumatic experience, you have whatever kind of disruption going on in your life. These kids have been disrupted in some way. And maybe their disruption has been very complex and going on for a long time before I got there.
Yeah.
Maybe it will happen again when I leave. There's that disruption. And the distortion happens. You'll see kids who are just like, no, I just want to stay with my parents, even though they're covered in bruises and they're not okay. There's this distortion that comes. And then you get into deviating. Individuals will look at a child and be like, why are you staying there? Well, why are you saying positive things about them? Why, they deviate from what other individuals, other decisions other people would make, not in that situation. So the skill that I really try to bring in is to help them digest what has happened, and that comes with asking the smallest, fewest questions possible. They've probably really never had the ability to just unload. So me just kind of sitting there as relaxed as possible. I don't take clipboards. I don't take my laptop.
Yes.
I take a book bag with magnetic blocks. Sometimes we just play games. Sometimes, there's,
Yes.
I deploy a lot of gameplay. For example, I do a game called, comfortable, uncomfortable, where I take the 5 senses and I say, what do you smell that makes you comfortable? What do you smell that makes you uncomfortable? What do you hear? What do you taste? What do you see? Without them having to feel like they are being snitch, accusing someone, saying more than they should. They're informing me of their experience. So I think because of what I grew up with, because of, growing up with a psychopath who all you saw every day was immense amounts of manipulation.
Yeah.
I kind of morbidly joke that I'm able to take that very negative skill that was used very negatively and create and apply this container that helps kids be able to speak without that trauma activation happening.
Yeah.
So that's, that's the biggest thing that I really try to share with our trainees. But for parents, from a parent perspective, when I'm meeting with them, like I'm very black and white. It's really, here's what I expect, here's where we're at, and here's what you can expect if such and such and such isn't ready. I do not, beat around the bush with caregivers. There's no time for that. I meet them where they are. I meet them in their world, but I can't stay there with them, and I can't operate in it as they would. So there is a bit of disassociating, in that moment, so that you can.
Or the boundary. I mean, it's your word. It's your truth to say that. But what I hear is I'm doing a talk in a couple weeks around kindness, which is a loaded word. It's taken me a while to unpack and like what I really want to share. But one of the things I want to talk about is clear is kind, right? And I didn't make that up. Whoever said that, clear is kind. And what I know by that is with adults, if I'm going to mimic a chaotic household, if I'm going to mimic a chaotic past, I am going to beat around the bush. I'm going to try to be who you need me to be, right? And if I want to bring in safety, it means I can come direct, softness, resonance, tenderness, but I'm clear. And even if that clarity is, these are the expectations, again, back to the banks of the river, right? And that doesn't always feel kind to a recovering people pleaser. It's like, no, I need to say it so you're not. No. That's people pleasing, right? That's the shadow side. That's not being kind at all. It's unclear, right?
It's my abuser allegiance.
Exactly.
You got to check. You have to check the abuser allegiance. I got it bad, and I got to check that shit.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Well, so take me there, because I heard from you, there's a game you play, uncomfortable or comfortable. So not only are you allowing folks to not be put in an investigatory position, right, or whatever you're not in inquisition. That's the word. But you're also allowing them to name or visualize or bring to their mind's eye some of their maybe external supports or things that they can orient to for their own safety. Find more of these comfortable things. How can we get more of them in your life? So that's even its own resilient skill. But then you just said, this is what I'm trying to loop around. You said, what did you just say about your skills? There was something. I'd have to pause and rewind, but I'm not going to. There's something you were just about to speak to, kind of where I was hearing more of your toolkit, like how you show up. You said I was manipulated, and now I have my own capacity. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's some thread, right? You're pulling on, and how do I use that skill in a pro-social way? So yeah, take me there for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. So, I learned manipulation very young. I was trained in it. It wasn't even me visualizing it. I was sat down and trained. I was scripted. I was put in situations where I had to act a certain way and be a certain way. And it went on for a very long time. And when it's a parent, when that happens to you from a parent, the allegiance to that parent drives a stake very far, very, very, very far. To this day, if my psychopathic parent were to show up at my door, they would be moved into my home tomorrow. It is that hardwired in me. My spouse sets wonderful boundaries to help contain that part of me that I'm still working through. It'll take a while to work through that. But when I, see other kids who I see it happening, I see it in their mind. I know that they are in such a horrible push and pull where they see a reality that's never existed for them, that now a court is trying to impose upon them. And then they see this person who is their whole entire world that they're programmed to care for. So, I'm able to kind of go back to that moment and think, what could someone have said to me? How could someone have worked around these parts and pieces to get what they need? And that is kind of where all of I call them my trauma games, have were born, are those pathways. But yeah, you do kind of have to take those really horrible, like criminal skills and, either turn
Yeah.
them into something or just ditch them altogether. A lot of them I ditch, like
Yeah.
slashing tires. I don't,
You
there's really
I'm
no
good.
way to.
We'll find other we'll put you in a rage room and help you there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's really no positive way to use a machete. It's not,
We could invent uh, so a so y as you were talking, it came to me what really struck me. You said before, "Check my shit." So that's what I wanted to so you said, I have to I'm constantly have to check my shit. How do you do that? And what are you checking? Because what we don't want to go into a shame spiral, right? You're the enemy. Now I am the enemy. Who's bad? Right? The blame game. What's it mean if you're going to kind of, and I actually have children now, a resilience focused, a healing centered, check your shit manual. What does it look like with softness and tenderness and compassion? What does that mean?
Mhm. For me, the first step is knowing where I am. And that's not just, oh, well, I'm in the kitchen. Where are you in your mind in that moment? If
Yeah.
I step into any situation, I mean, just taking costs off the table, if I step into the grocery store and, potpourri is a huge trigger for me. I was locked
Mm,
in a shop that my parent had
mm,
owned, and there was always dried flowers and fabric and potpourri. And people with their
yeah.
fucking winter cinnamon brooms, I'm not coming over.
Can't
It's
do it.
just not
Can't
a
do
thing.
it.
Yeah. So wherever I am, I have to really check where I am in my mind.
Yeah.
And if I'm not here, if I can't identify,
Yeah.
that I'm here, oof, red alarm, red alarm. I
Sure.
gotta stop and I've got to get here first and foremost. If
Mhm.
I'm a little too far gone, if I'm already in that place, but I'm in front of a kid now, like what are you going to do? Well, now I've got to check my external body. What are they seeing? Because even if I'm somewhere else in my mind, I'm still here with you and I'm still looking at you. What are they seeing?
Yeah.
Are you starting to tear up? Are you starting to do this? Are you,
Yeah.
is everything in your body starting to become an external response? And I check that. I make
Yeah.
sure that I start to kind of lean back. Oftentimes I sit on the floor as long as it's
Yeah.
an okay floor. Some floors are not okay, don't sit on them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But if it's an
Mhm.
okay floor, I get as small as I can get, for the benefit of that child, but also sometimes for me. Sometimes
Yeah.
I need to contain and get myself small. So those are really my number
Yeah.
one. Where am I in my mind? If I'm already beyond that, how am I, presenting?
Yeah.
Um, get myself out
Beautiful.
of that situation and realign.
Mhm. Yes. So I just to reiterate, where am I here now? Where am I in my mind internally? And then
Mhm.
what is being mirrored back to me so I can know where I am in my external environment. Yeah. And that I would
Yeah.
imagine that practice does bring you back to the here and now, and then you can navigate, and then I'm sure you have a lineage of you know uh, ways to fuel up and reconnect or digest, after your sessions and things like that. Yeah, it's
Oh
funny
yeah.
you mentioned the sitting down, because I can picture you on the left side of the room during the walk and talk I had folks do. You sat on the ground with your talking partner and you converse. Yeah, and that was a grounding. And so I didn't notice it as making yourself small. I did notice it as grounding, and so that's you model. It sounds like what has been helpful for you, and you also then give
Mhm.
permission for other people to meet their own needs, especially these kids.
Right.
So what a gift!
Right.
What an absolute gift! I have so many more questions. We're going to try to land the plane here in a moment, and we'll have you back. One of the sessions, and I don't know if this is going to come out before or after the conference, but one of the topics we're going to engage in together in this week is around the healing power of belonging. So I want to ask you about that. I want to hear your experience, because also, just like kindness, belong it's its own misunderstood term. It's its own, well, not until you're ready, or this person's ready to belong. This person isn't ready. We're human beings. We all need connection. Whether you learn how to belong to yourself, belong to one other person, belong to your pet, there's so many ways to unpack it. I don't mean drop people off in,
Mhm.
at the book club and see you later, bye, right? But we know belonging, that notion, it's a human need. It's a basic human need, just like food, water, shelter, etc. Tell me about your experience, people, it sounds like you have nothing in your map, your physiological map, in your development years, nothing that tells you people are safe, you should trust, you should connect, belonging is right. Nothing is telling you that. When I name
Shoot.
that theme, what does belonging mean for you? How has it shown up in your life? What's your push pull? Just riff on that
Yeah.
for a minute, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, no, totally. I very much agree with you that belonging, there's something so fundamentally human about that. I don't really know any species whatsoever that is just constantly solo all the time and fully enjoys that. Who knows? But yeah, from a trauma perspective, belonging, it's a very sad word for me. It sparks sadness sometimes when I hear it. Oftentimes when I hear it, but I think to really understand from a trauma perspective what that means, you've got to look at the shame aspect of it. And people, they get guilt and shame. They sometimes say them synonymously, and they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
Guilt has a resolve. Oh, I broke your vase. I'll get you another vase. Oh, I hurt you feel. I'm sorry. Let me. There's a way out of guilt.
Yeah.
Shame. Ooh. I call shame a fatal truth. So when you're dealing with belonging, there's a seat at the table and you want it. You want a seat at the table. You don't want to sit on the floor. Maybe that's where you've sat for a very long time, especially people who've been abused. The floor is where you belong, unless you are invited to the table. Here's the problem with that invitation. The invitation comes with a fatal truth. And a fatal truth is something that's counter to what you believe about yourself, your experience, people around you, your worldview. You have to accept that truth for a seat at the table. And accepting that is such a deep violation to all of those parts of you that it alters you to have to sit in that seat at that table. So when you are then put into a situation of people, with individuals who are genuinely like, hey, yeah, come on in, you're kind of like, but why? Why do you want me here? You also deal with, well, I'm only here because, because of having to accept those truths, to survive, you start to apply those truths to every bit of you. I still to this day ask my counselor, am I a psychopath? Are you sure I'm not a psychopath? Like, are you completely sure? What about this?
Yeah.
What about this symptom?
Yeah.
I still, deal with containing things that I shouldn't contain. I contained my psychopathic parent. I held them, when they would be angry. I did so much for them, and they constantly would tell me, you're the strong one. You're the strong one of the family. And I own that, and I became that. And I nearly killed myself in the process of being that person. Because when I sat down, when I, really looked at myself, I was like, I'm not strong at all, sorry. So belonging is, it's such a deep concept. And, for individuals who have been affected by trauma, regardless of the degree, regardless of the severity or the color of it, there is, that filter, there is that distortion that they have to work very hard to put aside, to hold it back, like holding back the gates of a flood to objectively look at the situation and go, they're just inviting me because people are invited and this seems really great. Instead of, they're inviting me because they need something to make fun of. They're inviting me because it's a pity party. Yes, there's something I have to give, something I have to accept.
Go a little bit. When you say, first of all, thank you. This really, really important what you're sharing. The fatal truth being, the truth of I have not belonged, or the fatal truth of I matter. Is I matter the fatal truth, and that's hard because I never have? Or is it just a mirror of I've never had this experience before, and so that reminds me of my truth? Tell me more about what you're saying there.
Yeah. So, a fatal truth in general, it's someone else's truth about you. And when you accept that, it really
Oh,
alters how you see actual truth, an actual invitation of like, hey, do you want to join us? And I saw you love gaming. Do you want to come game? And you're kind of like, does that make me what? If I, there's, and when you grow up in abuse, whatever people tell you, you're dirty, you're ugly, you're worthless, I hate you, you're only at this table because I said you could be, you are not allowed to eat. Well, now you're allowed to eat. Whatever it is, bullying in school, kids who have gone through severe acne, kids who have gone through, conditions that have caused, things to be noticed in their body. All kinds of situations where individuals are given an option. And in order for them to not feel the severe sting of loneliness, which that's a whole other sting of loneliness, they're going to trade something. They're going to trade a part of them that will be very difficult to get back. You can get it back, but it's a whole hell of a lot of work to, restore what you have had to trade for a seat at the table.
Yeah. Gonna let that land for a minute.
I know.
Yeah.
A lot. Belonging is powerful.
Well, and what you're naming is that there are barriers to belonging, right? There is this healing power, and I think that's what I'm going to unpack. And where I'm coming from, my bias that I'm coming from is folks who have intellectual and developmental disability labels, who are systematically segregated and congregated based on that label, not whether they have something in common or live near one another or share any kind of gift, passion, or interest. It's based on pathology. And again, that's a million other conversations, right? So that's a conversation to be had. But I see that, again, the systematic segregation prevents people from experiencing true belonging and true connection, not just based on my label, but who am I? So the counter side to that, right? So folks who have mental health labels, which comes from trauma histories, right? It's not one or the other. So to experience complex childhood trauma and have a basic human need for connection, but connection having been so unsafe, the barriers to belonging are numerous. And what I'm going to try to bring to the CASA folks is it can't get in our way from striving towards it. We can have a guiding light, but being mindful of those barriers so we can keep walking alongside folks when the parts of them say no, or when we have to give new messaging. You do matter. You are important. This isn't a transactional experience, right? There's going to have to be some messaging and some support to even have the capacity to accept an invitation, to accept that belonging. And I really appreciate how you deepen that. That's so key. Well put.
Thank you. Yeah. It's critical. And I think individuals need to know that you have the power of invitation. And when you are the person holding that invitation, that's an important power. You have a massive opportunity. And I look at that with my kids. Every time I step into a home, I have the power to invite them to a place, even if it's just one footstep towards the place where there are not conditions. There are conditions of safety, but there are not conditions that force them to accept something that would alter, severely who they are. I'm so excited for this conference subject.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited for you to be the plenary speaker next year. So I don't know, I'll talk to Megan or somebody, but geez, OP, you not only have an incredible story, which I know you even just heard bits and pieces, but you are a thought leader. You are incredible in your way to navigate what's happening out here, but also share your own lived experience too. So thank you. I think this is the longest interview I've done, but we're gonna thank you for sharing your time, your energy. I look forward to seeing you here in a couple of days. And just please, please, please keep doing your work of not just loving on people, but sharing all the insight that you have, because it's meaningful and hopeful, and it's making me comfortable right now. Comfortable and uncomfortable. I comfortable.
Yeah, comfortable.
Even hearing you and your story. Thank you, Sarai. We'll talk soon. Bye bye.
Thank you.